I said, "Hey, darling." The alien princess blushed and said, "Yes, darling." And we laughed together. Captain Marcus Chen looked out the window of his transport ship and felt his stomach drop. The planet below him was nothing like Earth. Tall crystal towers reached into purple clouds. The buildings glowed with soft blue light, like they were made of frozen starlight. This was Zephyria, home of the most powerful alien empire in the galaxy. Marcus touched the small pin on his uniform. It showed the flag of Earth. He was the first human to ever come here as an official visitor. The weight of his mission pressed down on his shoulders. If he did well, humanity would join the Galactic Coalition. If he failed, Earth would remain alone in space forever. Landing in 5 minutes, the pilot announced. The pilot was a Zephyrian, tall and thin with blue skin that looked like glass. All Zephyrians looked beautiful, but also cold and distant. Marcus checked his notes one more time. The pages were full of rules about how to behave. Don't look directly at the princess. Bow exactly 90 degrees. Never sit before being invited. Use only formal language. The list went on and on. The ship landed with a soft thud. Marcus took a deep breath and stepped out. The landing platform was huge, made of white stone that sparkled in the alien sun. Hundreds of Zephyrians waited for him. They all wore long, flowing robes in different shades of blue and silver. Their faces showed no emotion at all. In the center of the group stood a figure that made Marcus forget how to breathe. Princess Lirelei was even more beautiful than the pictures he had studied. Her skin was pale blue like morning mist. Her hair was silver and moved like water. Her eyes were the color of winter stars, but those eyes looked at him with complete coldness. An elderly Zephyrian stepped forward. His robes were dark blue with golden symbols. "I am Chancellor Vex," he said in perfect English. "You will follow protocol exactly, human. Any mistake will end these talks immediately." Marcus nodded and tried to remember everything from his training. He walked forward and stopped exactly 10 feet from the princess, just like his notes said. Then he made his first mistake. He looked directly into her eyes. The crowd gasped. Princess. Lirelei's expression didn't change, but several advisors whispered angrily among themselves. "First violation," Chancellor Vex announced coldly. "Continue." Marcus felt heat rise to his face. He bowed, trying to make it exactly 90 degrees. But he bent too far. The crowd gasped again. Second violation. The princess finally spoke. Her voice was like music, but her words cut like ice. "Is this the best representative your species can offer?" Marcus straightened up, feeling foolish. He was supposed to give a formal greeting in their language. He had practiced it 1,000 times. Standing there under all those cold stares, the alien words flew out of his head. "Hello," he said in English. The silence that followed was terrible. Marcus realized he had just committed his third major mistake in less than 2 minutes. Chancellor Vex looked like he wanted to send Marcus back to Earth immediately. Third violation. "You were supposed to greet Her Royal Highness in proper Zephyrian." "Sorry," Marcus started. Fourth violation, the Chancellor snapped. "You do not speak unless spoken to directly." Marcus closed his mouth. This was going worse than his worst nightmares. He could see his failure reflected in the princess's silver eyes. She looked at him like he was some kind of primitive creature that had wandered into a palace by mistake. They led him into the crystal palace. Everything was beautiful but felt cold. The walls were made of some kind of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. The ceilings were so high they disappeared into shadows. Marcus felt very small and very human. The throne room was enormous. The princess's throne was carved from a single piece of blue crystal, floated 3 feet off the ground without any visible support. Princess Lirelei sat on it like a statue, perfect and untouchable. Marcus was directed to a small chair far below her, but when he went to sit down, Chancellor Vex held up a hand. "Wait for permission," the Chancellor hissed. Marcus stood there awkwardly. His legs were getting tired, but he didn't dare move. Finally, after what felt like hours, the princess gave a tiny nod. Marcus sat down gratefully, but the chair was wrong for human bodies. It was too tall and the wrong shape. He shifted uncomfortably, trying to find a position that didn't hurt. Fifth violation, Chancellor Vex said with satisfaction. Fidgeting shows disrespect. Marcus forced himself to sit still, even though the chair felt like torture. The formal ceremony began. Other aliens spoke in their musical language about trade agreements and defense pacts. Marcus understood none of it. He was supposed to respond at certain points, but he missed most of his cues because he couldn't follow the conversation. Each missed cue was counted as another violation. When it was finally his turn to speak, stood up. He had a beautiful speech prepared about friendship between species and shared dreams among the stars. But looking up at Princess Lirelei, sitting on her floating throne, surrounded by hundreds of cold, beautiful faces, all his prepared, words seemed stupid and childish. He tried anyway. Your Highness, I come from Earth too. Sixth violation, the Chancellor interrupted. Wrong form of address, Marcus started over. Your Royal Magnificent Brightness. I come seventh violation. Still incorrect? This continued for 20 painful minutes. Every word Marcus spoke seemed to be wrong. The princess watched it all with those cold silver eyes, her face showing no emotion except perhaps mild distaste. Finally, Chancellor Vex raised his hand for silence. Enough, he said. This human has committed 17 separate violations of protocol in less than 1 hour. I recommend immediate termination of diplomatic relations. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Marcus felt his heart sink. He had failed completely. Earth would remain alone, and it was all his fault. Princess Lirelei stood up from her floating throne. When she spoke, her voice filled the enormous room. The human will be given quarters for the night, she said. Tomorrow we will decide Earth's future. As guards escorted him away, Marcus caught one last glimpse of the princess. For just a moment, he thought he saw something different in her expression. Not coldness, but maybe curiosity. Marcus was alone with his failure. Marcus spent the night in his assigned room, staring at the crystal ceiling. The bed was beautiful but uncomfortable, made for alien bodies instead of human ones. He couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Princess Lirelei's cold silver stare and heard Chancellor Vex counting his violations. 17 mistakes in 1 hour. Had to be some kind of record. His room had a large window that showed the alien city below. Crystal towers reached up toward 3 moons hanging in the purple sky. Everything looked perfect and untouchable, just like the princess. Marcus pulled out his communication device and almost called Earth to report his failure. But something stopped him. Maybe it was stubbornness. Or maybe it was the tiny moment when he thought he saw curiosity in the princess's eyes. He put the device away. He would try one more time, but not their way. Their way was impossible. The next morning, a guard came to escort him to another formal meeting. The guard was tall and silent, like all Zephyrians Marcus had met. They walked through long corridors filled with floating art and singing crystals. This place is incredible. Marcus said to the guard, How do the crystals make music? The guard looked surprised. You, wish to know? Sure, I've never seen anything like it. For the first time, the guard's face showed a tiny bit of emotion. The crystals respond to the emotional energy of those who pass by. Happy thoughts. Make higher notes. Marcus stopped walking and stared at a large purple crystal that was humming a sad, low song. So this one is responding to my feelings right now. Yes, the guard said, then quickly looked away as if he had said too much. They continued walking, but Marcus noticed the guard glancing at him curiously from time to time. The meeting was in a smaller room than yesterday, but it still felt huge to Marcus. Princess Lirelei sat on another floating chair, surrounded by her advisors. Chancellor Vex stood beside her, looking like he had swallowed something bitter. Human, the Chancellor, began today. You will have one final chance to— Excuse me, Marcus interrupted. All the aliens stared at him in shock. Interrupting was probably violation number 18, but Marcus had decided he was done with their impossible rules. Your Highness, he said, looking directly at the princess. Can I ask you something? As one person to another, Princess Liralay's eyebrows rose slightly. It was the first real expression he had seen on her face. What do you mean? Forget all the fancy titles and rules for a minute. I'm Marcus, aren't you? Right? He paused. Ah! What do your friends call you when you're not being a princess? The silence in the room was complete. Several advisors looked like they might faint. Chancellor Vex's face turned a darker shade of blue. But Princess Liralay tilted her head, studying Marcus like he was a puzzle she couldn't solve. I do not have friends. I am a princess. That's really sad, Marcus said simply. Right. More gasps from the advisors. Chancellor Vex stepped forward. This is completely wait, the princess said quietly. Everyone stopped moving. Continue, Marcus. It was the first time she had used his name. Marcus sat down in his uncomfortable chair and tried to explain. Where I come from, being important doesn't mean you can't have friends. It just means you have to work a little harder to find the good ones. Your world sounds very different from ours, the princess said. It is. We're messy and loud, and we make mistakes all the time. But we also laugh a lot and help each other and try new things. Marcus gestured at the beautiful but cold room around them. This place is amazing, but it feels ... lonely. Princess Liralay was quiet for a long moment. You were in my position? Honestly, I'd find a way to sneak out sometimes. Maybe walk around the city and talk to regular people, learn what they really think and feel. Chancellor Vex made a horrified noise. A princess cannot simply walk among commoners? Why not? Marcus asked. She's still a person, isn't she? For the first time, Princess Liralay smiled. It was just a tiny curve of her lips, but it transformed her entire face. She looked younger, less like a statue, and more like someone Marcus might actually want to know. Tell me about Earth, she said, not the official report. Tell me what it's really like. Marcus found himself relaxing for the first time since he arrived. He told her about rain falling on green forests, about cities full of music and laughter, about beaches where people played in the waves. He told her about his sister who was a teacher, and his friend who made terrible jokes, and his neighbor who grew the most beautiful flowers. As he talked, he watched the princess's face change. Her cold mask slowly melted away. She asked questions about Earth's customs, about human families, about how people chose their jobs and their partners. We have arranged marriages, she said. Quietly, I will marry whoever the council decides will best serve the empire. Have you ever been in love? Marcus asked. The advisors all looked scandalized, but the princess considered the question seriously. I do not think so. How would one know? Marcus thought about it. I guess. When you care more about making someone else happy than following the rules, when you look forward to seeing them more than anything else in your day, when they make you want to be a better person. Princess Liralay was quiet for a long time. That sounds wonderful, she said finally. It is, Marcus agreed, even when it's complicated. Chancellor Vex cleared his throat loudly. This conversation is highly inappropriate. Oh, relax, Marcus said with a grin. We're just talking, the princess laughed. It was a small sound, quickly covered by her hand, but it was real laughter. Several advisors looked like they might collapse. Your Highness, one of them whispered urgently, this is most undignified. But Princess Liralay was looking at Marcus with those silver eyes, and now they weren't cold at all. They were curious and bright and very much alive. Tomorrow, she said, I would like to continue this conversation, alone. Chancellor Vex sputtered protests, but the princess raised her hand for silence. It is decided. As Marcus was escorted back to his room, he noticed something different. The singing crystals in the hallway were playing higher, happier notes. The guard walking beside him was almost smiling. Maybe Marcus thought there was hope after all. The news spread through the Crystal Palace like fire. By evening, everyone knew that the human had made Princess Liralay laugh in the servants' quarters. Young Zephyrians whispered excitedly about the strange visitor who spoke to their princess like she was a regular person. In the noble halls, older advisors shook their heads and muttered about the end of proper society. Marcus didn't know about any of this. He was in his room trying to figure out what to do next. The princess had asked to see him alone tomorrow. but he had no idea what to expect. Would she still be curious about Earth, or would the cold mask be back? A soft knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. Marcus opened it to find a young Zephyrian servant girl. She looked nervous, but excited. "Sir," she said in careful English, "I brought your evening meal." "Thank you," Marcus said, taking the tray. "What's your name?" The girl's eyes widened. You wish to know my name?" "Of course. I'm Marcus." "I am Kira," she said, then glanced around nervously. "Sir, is it true? Did you really make the princess laugh?" Marcus smiled. She did laugh a little. "Why?" Kira's face lit up. "No one has ever made her laugh before, not in all my years serving in the palace. The older servants say she used to smile when she was very young, but not anymore." After Kira left, Marcus felt even more determined. If the princess had forgotten how to be happy, maybe he could help her remember. The next morning, Princess Lirelei came to see him in the palace gardens. She walked alone, without her usual crowd of advisors. She looked younger somehow, dressed in a simple blue dress instead of formal robes. "Good morning," she said, settling onto a bench beside him. "Good morning, Your Highness," Lirelei she said quietly. "When we are alone, you may call me Lirelei." Marcus felt honored. "Thank you, Lirelei. That's a beautiful name." She blushed slightly, the blue of her skin turning a soft purple. "Tell me more about Earth customs. Yesterday you mentioned that people choose their own partners. How does that work?" They talked for hours. Marcus told her about dating and romance, about how people fell in love and decided to spend their lives together. He told her about weddings and families, about couples who disagreed sometimes, but worked things out because they cared about each other. "It sounds wonderful," Lirelei said, "but also frightening." "What if you choose wrong?" "Sometimes people do," Marcus admitted. "But that's part of being human. We make mistakes, we learn, we try again. The important thing is having the freedom to choose." "I have never chosen anything for myself," Lirelei said sadly. "My food, my clothes, my schedule, my future husband, everything is decided by others." "What would you choose if you could?" Lirelei thought for a long moment. "I would choose to travel, to see other worlds and meet other people, to learn about different ways of living." She paused. "What would you choose right now?" "I'd choose to help you experience some of those things, even if we can't leave this planet." That afternoon, Marcus did something that scandalized half the palace and delighted the other half. He set up what he called a culture-sharing session in one of the smaller palace rooms, invited anyone who was curious about Earth to come, and learn, to everyone's surprise, dozens of Zephyrians showed up. Young servants, middle-aged guards, even a few younger nobles. They sat in a circle on the floor, something that would have been unthinkable in formal Zephyrian society. Marcus taught them human games, showed them how to play simple card games, and told them stories about Earth history, played music. From his communication device, rock and roll, jazz, classical, and folk songs from different countries. The Zephyrians were amazed. Their own music was beautiful, but very formal and structured. Human music was wild and emotional and full of surprises. "Earth," Marcus explained. "Music is for everyone. Rich people, poor people, old people, young people, anyone can make music or dance or sing along." A young guard named Zen raised his hand shyly. Could I try making music like that?" "Of course," Marcus said. He showed Zen how to clap rhythms and even taught him a simple song. Soon, half the room was clapping and laughing together. Princess Lirelei arrived halfway through the session. She stood in the doorway watching in amazement as her people laughed and made noise and acted completely undignified. Marcus noticed her and smiled. "Come join us. We're just having fun." "I couldn't," Lirelei said automatically. "It would not be proper." "Who cares about proper?" Marcus said. "Come on, darling. Live a little." The word darling just slipped out naturally, the way it might when talking to a friend who was being too serious. Hey. But the effect on the room was electric. Every Zephyrian froze. They all stared at Marcus, then at their princess, waiting to see. What would happen? Lirelei's face turned a deep purple, the Zephyrian equivalent of blushing bright red. But instead of being angry, she looked pleased, darling, she repeated softly, like she was tasting a new word. Marcus realized what he had done and started to apologize. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be disrespectful, but Lirelei was smiling. Really smiling, not just the tiny curve of lips from yesterday, but a full, joyful smile that transformed her entire face. Yes, she said, walking into the room and sitting down in the circle. Yes, darling. I think I would like to live a little. The room erupted in surprised murmurs, but they were happy murmurs. Marcus started the music again, and this time Princess Lirelei clapped along. She was terrible at keeping rhythm, but she didn't care. She was laughing. When someone started a simple earth dance, Lirelei tried to follow along. She stumbled and nearly fell, but Marcus caught her hand and steadied her. Thank you, she said, still laughing. Any time, darling, Marcus replied, and this time when she blushed and repeated yes. Darling, the laughter they shared wasn't shocking or scandalous. It was the sound of walls coming down and friendships being born. From the doorway, Chancellor, Vex watched with horror. But beside him, some of the younger advisors were smiling too. Maybe, they thought, change wasn't always a bad thing. The singing crystals throughout the palace hummed with pure joy, responding to emotions they hadn't felt in centuries. Word about the humans' strange methods spread far beyond the Crystal Palace. In the city below, Zephyrians talked about the ambassador who treated their princess like a friend and made her laugh. Some called it scandalous. Others called it wonderful. Marcus didn't realize how much things were changing until Princess Lirelei invited him to witness something incredible. There's been a development, she said, her silver eyes bright with excitement. The House of Storms and the House of Tides have agreed to meet about their ancient dispute. They want to try your, what did you call it, mediation? Marcus suggested.
Yes.
They want you to help them solve a problem that has divided our people for 300 years. Marcus felt nervous. Lirelei, I'm not sure I'm qualified to. Are the most qualified person on this planet, she said firmly. You see people, Marcus? Not just titles or positions or old grudges. You see who they really are. The meeting took place in a neutral location, a beautiful garden with floating islands of flowers. Representatives from both noble houses sat on opposite sides of a crystal table, glaring at each other. Lord Tempest from the House of Storms was old and proud, with dark blue skin and eyes like lightning. Lady Coral from the House of Tides was equally ancient, with pale green skin and flowing silver hair. They had been enemies since before Marcus was born. This is foolish, Lord Tempest declared. The water rights to the southern territories belong to us by ancient law. Ancient theft, you mean? Lady Coral snapped back. Your house stole those rights through trickery and lies. They might have argued for hours, just like they had for centuries. But Marcus did something different. Excuse me, he said politely. Can I ask what the southern territories are actually used for? Both nobles looked at him like he had asked why water was wet. For ... For agriculture, Lord Tempest said slowly.
Right.
Marcus asked. No, mostly crystal fruit. Lady Coral answered. It feeds thousands of our people. So you're both fighting over the rights to grow food that feeds your people? Marcus said. What if there was enough water for both of you? It's impossible, they said together. Marcus smiled. On Earth, when two groups need the same resource, sometimes they work together to make more of it. Have you considered building new water collection systems, or finding ways to use water more efficiently? The two nobles stared at each other. In 300 years of fighting, neither had ever thought about creating solutions instead of fighting over problems. We could ... combine our technologies, Lady Coral said slowly. My house knows water purification. Your house understands weather control. Lord Tempest's eyes lit up. We could create rain when needed and collect every drop. Within an hour, the ancient enemies were working together on plans to build the most advanced irrigation system their world had ever seen. Marcus just sat back and watched, amazed by how quickly cooperation could replace conflict. Princess Lirelei had been watching too. How did you do that? She asked as they walked back to the palace. I didn't do anything, Marcus said. I just asked them to think about what they really wanted instead of what they were fighting about. You made them see past their old anger to their common goals, Lirelei said thoughtfully. Is that how humans always solve problems? When we're smart, yes. Though sometimes it takes us a while to get there. Over the next few days, more success stories reached the palace. Trade disputes that had lasted decades were resolved in hours. Family feuds that had split noble houses were healed through simple conversations. Marcus's approach, listening, finding common ground, treating everyone with respect was spreading through Zephyrion. Society like ripples in a pond, but not everyone was happy about the changes. Chancellor Vex called an emergency meeting of the High Council. The most powerful nobles in the Empire gathered in the Great Chamber, their faces serious and concerned. This human is dangerous, Chancellor Vex declared. He is destroying our traditions, our social order, everything that has kept our civilization stable for thousands of years. People are happier, Princess Lirelei said from her throne. Conflicts are being resolved. How is that dangerous? Because it weakens respect for authority, an elderly noble shouted. If commoners think they can speak to nobles as equals, if servants think they can laugh and make music with their betters, society will collapse. Maybe, Princess Lirelei said quietly, our society needs to change. The council chamber fell silent. No royal had ever spoken such words. Your Highness, Chancellor Vex said coldly, you are young and have been influenced by this alien's strange ideas. But I have served your family for centuries. I know what is best for our people. Do you? Lirelei stood up, and for the first time in her life she spoke with the full authority of her position. I have learned more about our people in the past week than in all my years of formal education. I have seen servants who dream of art, and nobles who long for friendship, and children who wish they could choose their own futures. Your Highness, I am not finished, Lirelei said, and her voice rang through the chamber. For too long, we have valued order over happiness, tradition over growth, fear over love. The human has shown us a different way. The human will leave, Chancellor Vex said with a cruel smile. His kind always do. And then what will remain of these dangerous ideas? Princess Lirelei looked directly at Marcus, who was standing quietly at the side of the room. Then we will carry them forward ourselves. We will choose to be better. And if the council votes to exile the human immediately, Chancellor Vex asked. What then, Your Highness? Lirelei took a deep breath. Marcus could see her making a choice. That would change everything. Then, she said clearly, the council will be voting against their princess as well as their guest. Because I stand with Marcus and everything he represents. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Several nobles looked angry, but others seemed thoughtful, even impressed by their princess's newfound courage. Chancellor Vex's face darkened. Very well, Your Highness. The council will consider your ... position. But remember, even princesses can be replaced if they no longer serve the Empire's best interests. It was a threat, barely disguised. Princess Lirelei didn't back down. Let them try, she said quietly. I finally know who I am, and I won't pretend to be someone else ever again. As the nobles filed out, arguing among themselves, Marcus approached the throne. Thank you, he said simply. Darling, Lirelei replied with a small smile. For helping me find my voice, but Marcus could see the worry in her silver eyes. The real fight was just beginning. The emergency alarms began screaming at dawn. Marcus woke up to flashing red lights and the sound of crystal walls humming with danger. Outside his window, he could see ships in the sky, dark, ugly vessels that looked nothing like the beautiful Zephyrian craft. Princess Lirelei burst into his room without ceremony. Her formal robes were gone, replaced by practical clothes that looked almost military. Her face was pale with worry. The Devourers have come, she said urgently. Have perhaps an hour before they land. The Devourers? Marcus asked, pulling on his clothes quickly. A species that conquers worlds by targeting their weakest points, Lirelei explained as they ran through the corridors. They study civilizations for years, learn their patterns, then attack in ways that make it impossible to respond effectively. They reached the command center where Chancellor Vex and the military leaders were arguing loudly. Display screens showed the approaching enemy fleet, hundreds of ships in perfect formation, We must follow the ancient defense protocols. Chancellor Vex was insisting. Form our ships into the traditional battle lines, activate the planetary shields, and meet them with honor. The traditional methods failed on 6 other worlds, General Azur said grimly. The Devourers have studied our tactics for decades. They know exactly how we fight. Then what do you suggest? Chancellor Vex snapped. I don't know, the general admitted helplessly. Everything we try, they counter perfectly. That's when Princess Lirelei stepped forward. What if we tried something they haven't studied? Something unpredictable? All eyes turned to her. Chancellor Vex looked angry. Your Highness, this is not the time for experiments. It's exactly the time, Marcus interrupted. Everyone stared at the human who had just spoken up in their most critical moment. The Devourers beat everyone who fights the way they expect. But they don't know how humans think. You want to risk our entire civilization on human tactics? Chancellor Vex asked coldly. I want to save it, Marcus replied. Lirelei is right. If they've studied your methods for decades, then your methods are exactly what will get you killed. Princess. Lirelei looked at the military leaders. What do our traditional protocols say about this situation? General Azur consulted his screens. Form defensive lines around the capital city. Protect the most important targets first. Engage the enemy fleet in formal battle formation. And that's exactly what they'll expect, Marcus said. What if we did the opposite? The opposite? Chancellor Vex looked horrified. Leave our capital undefended? Not undefended, Marcus said, his mind racing. Protected in a completely different way. What if instead of hiding behind your shields, you invited the enemy to land exactly where you want them? Princess Lirelei's eyes lit up. She understood immediately. A trap. Not just any trap, Marcus continued. One that uses their own expectations against them. They expect you to protect your most important buildings and people. So what if those buildings were empty, and your real command center was somewhere they'd never think to look? General Azur leaned forward, interested despite himself. Go on, Marcus pointed to the displays. They're coming in perfect formation. Because that's how you always fight them. But what if your ships suddenly scattered in all directions? What if instead of meeting them in space, you let them land and then surrounded them? Possible, Chancellor Vex said. Our ships cannot coordinate without formal command structures. Human ships could, Marcus said, because human pilots don't just follow orders. They adapt, they improvise, they make decisions based on what they see in front of them. Princess Lirelei stood up. Then we combine both. Zephyrian technology with human flexibility, Your Highness, Chancellor Vex protested. This is madness. But General Azur was studying the tactical displays with new interest. Actually, it might work. Our ships are faster and more maneuverable than theirs. If we could coordinate without predictable patterns, I can teach your pilots, Marcus offered. Not complicated strategies, just basic principles. Think light. Individuals instead of units. React to what's actually happening instead of following predetermined plans. Princess Lirelei made her decision. Do it. The next hour was the most chaotic in Zephyrian military history. Marcus worked with a team of pilots, teaching them to think like humans. Instead of flying in perfect formations, they learned to spread out and work together like a pack of wolves, instead of following rigid attack patterns. They learned to respond to opportunities as they appeared. The Zephyrians were confused at first, but they were also incredibly smart. Once they understood the concept, they adapted quickly. Princess Lirelei coordinated the ground defenses, using the same principles. Instead of protecting obvious targets, they set traps in unexpected places. Instead of formal command hierarchies, they created small teams that could make quick decisions. When the Devourer fleet arrived, they found exactly what they expected. Zephyrian ships in traditional defensive positions around the capital city. What they didn't expect was for those ships to suddenly scatter like startled birds, regrouping in patterns that made no strategic sense according to any military doctrine. They had studied, the Devourers tried to adapt, but their ships were designed for fighting predictable enemies. When faced with Zephyrian technology guided by human creativity, they couldn't keep up. Zephyrian pilots who had never broken formation in their lives suddenly found themselves diving through crystal canyons using the planet's natural structures as shields and launching points for surprise attacks. The enemy's superior numbers meant nothing when they couldn't predict where the next attack would come from. On the ground, Devourer troops landed exactly where the Zephyrians wanted them to, in elaborate crystal palaces that looked important but were actually empty. While the invaders wasted time searching for leaders who weren't there, the real commanders struck from hidden positions throughout the city. The battle lasted only 3 hours. When it was over, the mighty Devourer fleet was either destroyed or fleeing back into space. In the command center, exhausted Zephyrians stared at their victory displays in amazement. They had one using methods that violated every rule of war they had ever learned. Princess Lirelei found Marcus standing on a balcony, looking out at the city where celebration lights were beginning to shine. "We did it," she said softly. "You did." "It," Marcus replied. "I just showed you that it was okay to break the rules. We did it together," Lirelei said firmly. "And now the Galactic Coalition will see that humans don't just deserve a place among the stars. They're essential to our survival." Marcus smiled. "So I didn't completely fail as an ambassador?" "Darling," Lirelei said, taking his hand, "you succeeded in ways no one could have imagined." "Yes, darling," Marcus replied with a laugh. "I suppose I did." Their laughter echoed across the crystal city, no longer scandalous or strange, but the sound of two civilizations coming together. The singing crystals throughout the planet hummed, with joy, responding to emotions of hope and friendship that would reshape the galaxy. In the months that followed, the human approach spread to dozens of worlds. Species that had been enemies for centuries learned to cooperate. The Galactic Coalition didn't just accept humanity, they asked Earth to help solve conflicts throughout the galaxy and in the Crystal Palace of Zephyria. A princess who had found her voice and a human who had found his purpose worked together to build a future where darling wasn't just a term of endearment, but a promise that all beings could be seen and valued for who they truly were.